if I don't know you, my name's Frey. I'm the exhibitions manager at the Delaplaine Art Center, where you're seated right now. You know, we had a talk planned by Noelani Jones, the artist on the second floor, and she had to cancel it, and we're actually moving it to April, I think. But she's going to bring in a loom and do a demonstration. It's going to be great. But we'd been throwing around this idea of, well, I don't know that I've ever really been in a talk that talks about how to look at art. And so we were throwing around the idea a little bit here and there. And I, maybe foolishly, just decided, let's do it. Let's do it in February. And so you've got to know that first I realized how ridiculous a topic, at least the title is. When I sent the title and the marketing stuff over to Jackie to post it, as soon as it went live, I was like, what was I thinking? This is a very pretentious thing to say, you know? And so I totally realized that, and I hope that I haven't led anyone astray as far as your expectations for the title, but I hope to do some fun stuff with y'all on the topic. So, you know, there's no way that I can touch on the multiplicity of perspectives that there are, or ways of talking about or seeing art. There are as many ways of looking at art as there are people. Do you know what I mean? And so, you know, it's a little ridiculous to think that this is going to be exhaustive in any way. It's not. But what I thought we would do, we'll maybe cover some of the tracks there. What I hope to do is I'm going to talk to you for a couple of minutes, 10, 15 minutes. And then I've got some examples of artwork, and I'd love for us to have a dialogue about some artwork. And we'll set some parameters for that in a few minutes. So there's no pressure to this, you know. There's a few reasons why I wanted to do a talk like this, other than maybe some of the things I've hinted at. And one is that ever since, you know, I graduated from undergrad, I miss talking about art with people. I just miss it. And this felt like a really good excuse to engage in some of that. There's something really profound and beautiful about the fact that I can stand beside somebody who I have no idea about, look at a piece of artwork, and we can have a deep dive conversation almost immediately. I mean, you can get into talks about hopes, dreams, fears, all kinds of stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to go deep, but it's really easy to go deep fast. And I miss conversations like that. The world, you know, I'm a little bit exhausted with the superficial, you know, and so I'm very interested in deep conversations, and I love that art can kind of facilitate some of those deep conversations. The other reason is that, so for several years now, I've been trying to have some intentional conversations with people about, I'm going to more generally say, things that are poetic. You know, the word poetic doesn't necessarily mean poem. You can watch a basketball player dunk a basketball, and we've used phrases like it's poetry in motion, those sorts of things. You can look at a flower and say that there's something poetic about it. That word tends to transcend categories in some ways. So I've been trying to facilitate some conversations in some group settings about visual art, but also poetry. And I'm going to use poetry as an example here. Whenever I facilitate these conversations, I, as the moderator, maybe selfishly pick poems that I have a relationship with, that I've spent a considerable amount of time reading and poring over. But usually what ends up happening is when we have a discussion about a poem, someone will say something and it's a completely different vantage point. It's something that I would never think of, and it's always incredible. But how they, especially if they don't have a relationship with poetry, in those instances, how they preface what they say that's amazing is usually something like, I don't know if this is right, but, you know? And I love when people can find the courage to bypass that, I don't know if, to bypass that sense of like, you're probably not right in what you're about to say, but maybe you should try to say it, maybe you shouldn't say it actually. And then it comes out, I don't know if this is right, but, and then they say something that like blows you away, you know? Anyone ever had experiences like this? I've said things like this very often, you know. And so for just a few minutes, I want to kind of address this statement. I don't know if this is right, but, and that'll be kind of our intro into talking about and thinking about and looking at art. What it means for someone to say that, and if that resonates with you, is that there's some kind of a knowledge or formulation, some sort of sense inside of you that you have a sense about what's right about the poem. Do you know what I mean? Is this making sense to you? There's some kind of knowledge inside of you. And maybe your hesitation is that kind of knowledge has been pushed to the margins, and over time that margin shrinks smaller and smaller and smaller to where we don't really pay attention to that anymore. And my hope is that what this talk will do, and this is probably a loftier hope than, you know, being exhaustive about the topic, is that maybe we can give that margin space a little courage. Maybe we can nudge it a little bit and wake it up. Maybe we can allow that dormant thing, that latent possibility, to wake up a little bit. Now, saying things like this is tricky because, you know, I'm not going to suggest that all ways of talking about a particular piece of art are the best or right ways to talk about it. But, you know, it's not all subjective. It's not all subjective. But I actually don't want to hang out in that statement very long. I don't want to hang out there. Because one of the problems is that a lot of the teaching methods that we ascribe having kind of that we place the most value is that your job is to get the right answers about things. And that's not necessarily the best way to think about art, you know? I have small kids. I've got a 3-year-old son, Arthur, and I've got a 10-year-old daughter, Finley. She just turned 10. And, you know, when my kids are playing, I don't stop them and say, like, you guys aren't really playing the right way. There's no considerations necessarily about rationale in their playing. And artists who are making art know something about this. We know the importance of play and of making bad things, of making mistakes, in order to get to something deeper within ourselves. It's absolutely necessary if you're interested in making poetic art, I'm going to say it that way, that you're making bad art often, you know? Ernest Hemingway talked about, I don't know that he called it the iceberg principle, but he talked about it in this way, that 80% of what he said, 80% of what you write should not be considered, like it shouldn't have a social consideration. That 80% informs the 20%. Yes. It informs it. But not everything is meant to necessarily be seen in a social setting. And so but artists know this place of like needing to play, of needing to make mistakes. And sorry, finding my place here. And I think that artists have something to teach us in that way. So often how we tend to think about art or things in the humanities, these sorts of things, is because of ways of learning and teaching in certain systems, we end up thinking about them as a treasure map. Like if you had the right teaching, if you went to the right school or were in the right program, then you get access to the treasure map and you get to find where X marks the spot. You get to figure out what the meaning of the work is, do you know? And this just isn't necessarily the right way of thinking about what art can do. Art doesn't function in this way, and part of the reason for that is it's too multidimensional, it's too open. Artists often talk about flow state and intuition. For centuries, for millennia, artists have responded to making art and utilized language that has parameters that are more closely associated with relationship than with like figuring out the right answer and figuring out the right way of doing things. We've used words like the muse, which we place anthropomorphic, features upon. We consider it in relational terms, and the thing about relationships is there's a great book called I, Thou by Martin Buber, and Buber talks about the difference between I-it relationships and I-thou relationships. And I-it relationships are transactional. They're one-dimensional, but I-thou relationships take into consideration things like the fact that we're organic creatures. A poet that I love, Wendell Berry, talks about the agricultural model for understanding of what it's like to be human, and he says things like all living things, all living organisms are they're in cycles of growth and decay. They're in cycles of growth and decay all the time. Seasonal cycles of that. And if we allow that model to work over us, then there are places within us that are in cycles of growth and decay. We're in flux. And if one of us is in flux, and we bring this into relational terms, that there are two people in flux, the parameters around that relationship are not very they're more open than they are fixed. Am I making sense to you guys? Okay, cool. Any questions so far? Any thoughts? Yeah.
When you talked about the relationship between I in and I thou,
yeah.
My assumption with the word thou was that you were going to go into like a reverence, like that was a relationship of reverence because of the word thou and how it's related to religion. But
Well, Buber.
I didn't read the book you were referencing.
Yeah. Buber was a Jewish philosopher, and so he's definitely hinting in that direction. There's something to be said for that as far as reverencing what's in other people in order to make a lasting bond that can be considered a relationship. So yeah, I think you're onto something there. Yes?
Right in line with what you said, respecting someone else. Honor, the whole idea of honor.
Well, respect, think about the word. Respect is that you respect. You look, spectacle. You look a second time. You look long enough. You're not dismissive. We'll talk about a dismissive attitude towards art that we don't understand in a few minutes. But yeah, respect. Did you have a question? Yes.
I've always been frustrated by artists that will refuse to reveal what they intended in a piece.
Okay.
And my thinking being, I'm interested in what you intended. I may have my own interpretation, but they're two different questions.
Sure.
Do you have make a comment on
I
that?
think we'll touch on that a little bit here in a few minutes. So, so let's circle back. If I don't hit your question very well, we can maybe address it a little better. Okay, treasure maps. We've gone through that. Well, let me hit on that a little bit. It's a little bit my next point. So here's my hope. I hope that we're going to look at a few images in a couple of minutes. And again, there's no pressure here. But I'd love to have an open dialogue about what we're engaging with. And but I'm going to do something that might be a little controversial. It might be in the direction that you're talking. And this isn't to belittle that kind of information. It's not that at all. But it's rather to, if you go to a physical therapist, I had a shoulder injury this past year, and I've been going to the physical therapist, and what the physical therapist does is they demand that you relinquish some strength, you relinquish some control of what's strong in your body in order to exercise what's weak. And really the point of this talk is to exercise maybe something that's weak in us. And we rely on certain kinds of information because of comfort. We rely on certain things, and that's actually what, it's not that those things aren't important, it's that our reliance on them can often tend to cause us to ignore other parts of us that are important. And so we'll talk a bit about emotional intelligence and instinctual intelligence, or intuitive intelligence is what I wanted to say. We'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute when considering artwork. But okay, so I'm going to withhold, here's what's controversial about the approach that we're taking. I'm going to withhold certain information from you. And some of you will likely have seen some of the images that we'll talk about. And you'll know some kinds of information that I'll be withholding from you. But I'm not going to tell you things like, if you don't already know it, maybe at some point I will, but I want us to exercise a certain kind of resistance in order to work some kind of strength. So I'm not going to tell you who the artist is, and I'm not going to tell you the title, and I'm not going to tell you the medium. We might talk about the size because, well, I'll talk about the problemacy of how we're going to be engaging this in a minute by the fact that we're looking at it on a digital screen. But so I'm going to withhold some information from you. When you're an art student, you are involved in critique, and the way that my teachers did critique was that you put your work in front of a group of people, and you're not allowed to say a word about it. And the reason that you're not allowed to say a word about it is because you have to understand that you are putting information in front of people. You're putting visual information in front of people. And that visual information communicates certain things. And you can say all day long that you intended this to be this, but if that intention is not translating through the visual, then you're not necessarily doing your job as an artist. Does that make sense to you? And so this exercise in withholding information, again, to kind of drive it home, is not that those things aren't important, but it's to exercise something else in us. And we can talk again all day long about the different modes through which, or the different lenses through which you can engage in artwork, and we'd be here forever. But so again, my hope is to create a space for a few moments where we kind of honor an intuitive way of thinking about the world. So often, I'm the exhibitions manager here, and often I'll watch people, or my office is just off of the side gallery and the east gallery, and so I'll hear people talking, but also I'll watch people, and I don't just say this about other people. I do this myself all the time when I go to a museum or a gallery, and the closer I walk to a work of art, the closer I get, my eyes kind of list down towards the tag. And the tag, you know, it's going to tell you who, it's going to tell you what sometimes. It might even tell you where. It'll tell you how much. It gives you certain kinds of information. But it gives you information that we're really comfortable with in our information age. You know? It gives you like the news. But what I don't know how you feel about this, but all of the news is secondary information when it comes to what's happening right here. Do you know what I'm saying? It's secondary. And so I had art instructors who would say, like, your first job when you walk into an art gallery is to some degree emote, like get connected with what you're seeing before you start pumping yourself full of this comfortable information. You know? And that's a really hard exercise, but it's comfortable again because we're in the information age. We're like inundated with information. We feel as if we can apprehend and maybe even control things if we've just got the right amount of information. But, you know, artists deal with wonder often. And wonder necessitates a certain kind of ignorance. You can't have wonder if you know everything about something. Do you know what I mean? And so, you know, I'm not saying ignorance like in like a necessarily a pejorative way, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Okay. Y'all doing good?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, I gotta hurry up.
I have nowhere to go this afternoon.
Oh, nice.
Yes, you may go to 115.
Thank you. Okay. Oh, let's see. Where am I?
My mind is expanding already. Thank you.
Good. That's what I'm after. Okay, so I touched on this a minute ago, but because of our proclivity to prefer and find comfort in information and in understanding, apprehending, often we reactively get really dismissive about things that we don't understand. It happens very quick. Oh, don't even look at that yet. It's kind of a joke slide anyway. We're not going to dive deep into that. Okay, what was I saying? We get very, very dismissive about things that we don't understand. I had an encounter with somebody in our East Gallery a couple of months ago. A lady was in, and it was a group show, and there was some abstract work in it, and she was almost upset that we were allowing abstract work here at the Delaplaine because she just had no relationship with it. And she just didn't understand how to approach it, really. No one had had that conversation with her. There's nothing against her. But she was very dismissive of it very quickly. And there was I couldn't convince her otherwise, you know. Like, I tried with certain methods, and we had a good talk. It turned out to be a good talk, but I think about that a lot. And one thing that I want to encourage you, not just in what we're doing today, but in general, is that, like, you know, if you don't like a work of art, if you don't like a film, if you don't like a song, there's actually a lot of information tied up in the fact that you don't like it. And that information could be very important to you. Some of the films that have changed my life, I've hated at first watch. But they stick in your crawl. Do you know what I mean when I say that? They stick in there. They work something in you. There's an agitation. It's a necessary agitation. Disruption's a really important part of art making, so if you don't like something, you know, I think it would behoove all of us to take some time and think about why don't I like this thing? Like, give it that kind of respect, you know? Maybe you'll come out the other end. I'm not saying that you have to end up liking it. Maybe you'll come out the other end and you'll be like, I don't like it even more now. And that's fine, but at least you've done some work toward it. At least you haven't come about that, like kind of lazily, And so, things to think about. Oh, y'all didn't know you were getting into this, did you? Okay, this is a joke slide. Anybody know about this? Anybody seen this? Okay, I'm going back.
I haven't seen it.
How many of you had like an immediate reaction when you saw that up? I heard immediate giggles when I slipped and showed that. Immediate giggles. There's information in your giggle, my friends. There's information in the giggle. That's a t-shirt for you there.
Easily amused.
Yeah, easily. Yeah. So this is a recent artwork that sold. I don't remember how much it sold for.
12 million.
8 or 12 million. And then someone recently bought. What was it? Someone bought another version of it and ate it on the spot after they paid a bunch of money for it. We're not actually going to talk about this. Okay. Okay, so there's information that comes up kind of immediately. And so right off the bat, I show you an image, and you've got some initial reactions, and then those initial reactions start very quickly to get crowded out by, I don't know if this is right, but, remember that? I don't know if this is right, but, and so, could you all be brave enough just throw out some things. First thoughts that come to your mind. It could be anything. We're not trying to get things right. We're not trying to get to X marks the spot with this one and what the meaning is. Can you all see it okay? Yes, Sarah.
This resonates with me big time.
Woo!
I have recurring dreams of being lost in confusing architecture. And
Really?
I'm like, well, that's exactly how it feels. I don't even know if that's architecture, but from here, that's what it feels like.
Man, how incredible is it that seeing something for 15 seconds can take you into the depths of your psyche, talking about dreams. Like, that's pretty frickin' incredible, friends. That's what makes me so excited about the art world, Okay, anybody else?
Jumbled mind.
Yes.
I kind of dodged the question and start trying to figure out how did they technically do that.
Well, yeah, that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. The technical lens is a lens through which you can view art. There's nothing wrong with the technical lens. And so, I don't necessarily think we should shy away from it. But that's good. Thank you for sharing that.
The banana and the tape, I got the technology.
Oh, yeah. High-tech business there. Yes?
It's kind of a literal approach, but when I first saw it, I thought of my own struggles with the affordable housing crisis.
Okay, yeah. What about it? Can you elaborate? Like, what about it sends you in that direction, that associational direction?
Chaotic frenzy of a head formed from architectural elements.
Yeah.
Searching for whatever, trying to find a security home.
Yeah.
It's a sense of one's own place.
Yeah. Yes.
It could also look like a lot of stuff going on in a mind at one time.
Right.
While trying to stay focused on what's going on.
Yeah. Yes, Mark.
That was profound. He wants to find a home. So the whole thing of that part of it, because I saw right away, there's a window. The information's coming in, what he's seeing. But the thing about finding a home, finding a place to rest. Is there a bedroom in there?
Yeah, I don't know. There's something about that, and some of the conversation, there's some of the things that have been said already, and I want to point to this as maybe a nod towards intuition, maybe something that you're recognizing and you don't know that you're recognizing, which no one has said yet. The figure's nude. So there's a vulnerability tied into, there's the juxtaposition of vulnerability with sort of this chaotic sense. But not just that, the background seems to have, it's a little harder to see up there, it seems to be made of concrete, which further extends like the difference between, within that juxtaposition, the gap that exists between like the vulnerability of nudity and, you know, maybe the sterileness of like, I don't know, brutalist architecture or something like that. Like I'm throwing that out there, but it's evidently, I love that the artist made these decisions as far as like making the background kind of a cement, something like that.
Is that a just on technique?
Yeah.
Is that a graphite or pencil drawing, or is it a painting?
I believe it's a digital collage of some photography, yeah. Yes?
It's also very fragile. The material is very thin, and it looks, you know, if you could crush it.
Yeah.
So that's contrasting with the background that you're seeing.
That's great. Really good. Yeah. Mark?
Yeah, it's broken up, fragile and even like broken. The edges are jagged.
Right.
There's nothing smooth in there.
Yeah.
Except his body is smooth.
Yep. Yeah.
It's an ink blot. Everybody's seeing something that comes from inside of themselves. And I'm looking at the background, it looks to me like one of those Landsat photographs of the planet.
Okay, yeah.
The vegetated area. I'm looking at the person gets lost in the architecture.
Mm. Yeah.
You can't find the person. It's just an hint of shoulders, and the thinking person is not there. Or
Right.
it's hidden, or it's morphed.
It's funny to me that with everything that's been mentioned, we've kind of assumed that the structure on top of the neck is the head. No one said that it's actually a mask. It's larger than a head is, but because of the nature of it, we've said, like we've internalized already that this is a state of mind. We've taken it from being something that could be existent on the outside and it's inside. Because we feel it. We all feel this way, you know? Yes?
Well, I mean, when I look at it, I see like a lot of chaos outside of that structure that is built almost protectively around the core head of that person, and as if they've developed some degree of protection within that little box against all that chaos that is around them.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so the mask or like armor kind of approach, helmet sort of thing. Yeah. Sarah?
So initially, obviously, I went in, so like the internal state of things, and then as we're talking about it and sitting with it, so this morning I was reading about Picasso's and his Minotaur, you know, I'm obsessed with Minotaur. But I was, as everyone's talking, I'm thinking, because it kind of looks like paper, like it's crumpled from back here. I can see it close. And I'm like, what if this is like a crumpled thing, like the Minotaur head that Picasso wears to the beach, you know, that this person is sort of putting this crumpled thing on.
Yeah. Yeah. Bonnie Frey.
I find it interesting that the main part of the head is the window that the person takes in. It's like their view, what they're seeing, and everything else is all these jumbled little thoughts or fragments of things around it, but the part that they're seeing is still intact.
Yeah, that's good. There's a in art school, you know, we talked about the power of the eyes. Like if you withhold the eyes from somebody, it feels like you're withholding their actual identity. And I think the artist has done a good job at like hinting at what could take in information, or you know, what's replacing the eyes. I think that's good. Bonnie.
I'm a very realistic person.
Great.
So I, of course, I see a face, I see an eye, and I see a nose, I see a very confused lips, like, what is going on? That's what I see when I look at this.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to find something real in things, so there you go.
Do you do that thing where, like, you could look at the grain of wood in the floor and see a face or see something like that? Yeah, I do that all the time.
I see all sorts of things.
Yeah, yeah, yep.
That's me.
Yeah,
Gotta make it real.
I do that too.
yeah. Y'all are great. Yes.
Just say that, you know, chaos keeps coming up the background and jagged and this and that, but I just keep seeing how relaxed these shoulders are.
Okay, yeah,
That's good.
yeah. That's great.
I see like it's like the questioning of perception. I mean, it's almost like the indication is that there's a tendency to use perception for external reasons. But what about the perception of internal situation or
Right.
internal your feeling about it? So this kind of like reminds me more of not a battle, but almost a tugging of perception going outward as opposed to perception going inward, and questioning how can we change what we see?
Mm.
And yes, we can.
Mm.
We can change what we see. So to me, it just speaks to that battle, not battle, but that contrast between external perception going outward and perception going inward, to get in touch with more of what's going on within you.
Yeah.
As a reality, as opposed to the reality that we see with our eyes.
It's great, Ron. Yeah. Yeah.
For some reason, there's a couple of details in the fragmented part that it makes me curious if those are memories. And so everything they take in is somehow, you know how you can see or smell something and it triggers a memory, and
Mm-hmm.
how your memories can be kind of fragmented. Because I see an old chair, I see a bench, I see it looks like part of a shop or something down, like maybe a place that she's been. It triggers a memory. I don't know.
Yeah, it's great. Does anyone have whenever I have a dream and I try to tell somebody about that dream, the more I talk about it, the less I feel like I'm being, not clear, but even faithful to the dream, you know? And so I think that speaks a little bit to what Ron's saying. Like, nobody's mentioned the fact that, like, portraiture has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and this is definitely a portrait pose. Like, this is the arrangement of a portrait. And if you imagine this hanging next to, like, I don't know, a Rembrandt portrait or something like that, you get an immediate sense of something that's happened in history and in the way that we've developed our understanding to move from one sense of portraiture to another sense of portraiture. And so, yeah, you could think about this through an art historical perspective or a cultural perspective, and think about, like, Freud made that sort of thing, not made it, but brought to light that this sort of thing, being a portrait of the psyche, like, makes that possible, you know. Okay, should we move on to something else quick? We'll spend a little bit of time here. Man, this is an artist I really love. I stumbled across one of her paintings at the National Gallery, a recent acquisition a couple of years ago. But any thoughts? I think we'll probably, like, get similar. Oh, one thing I didn't mention is, and I said I was going to, was, there's a great problem to see in doing a talk like this and doing it from a screen. And so I've avoided sculpture, I've avoided installation art, because you know, you're kind of getting a better representation of a two-dimensional image on a screen like this. You lose there's so much information that you lose just from this. But I thought it would be a little irresponsible to even get into sculpture just because you're seeing one vantage point. It's, you know, so anyway, that's why we'll mostly be talking about two-dimensional images. But yes.
See religious iconography with the liturgical colors. It looks to me like Mary and a figure of religious, either Jesus or a saint or something like that.
Do you mostly see the figure here? I'm sorry, you're at a bad angle over there.
I can see it.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't hear all that comment clear. Maybe it's just me.
Religious iconography?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Liturgical colors.
Yes. Yes, Mark.
Two people in a relationship trying to sort it out.
Yeah, I was getting with the color red symbolizing or can symbolize negatively anger or so when I look at abstract work, to be able to be familiar with the language of abstraction, like color and line, reveals a lot about probably where this artist was trying to say something, was trying to indicate something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes?
I see this through the eyes of a retired Catholic, and I will say that I think the image on the left is his face, but the image on the right is the back of his head, and like his religious teachings are always in the back of his mind, whether he wants them there or not. Wow.
That's great, Chris. Yes.
Because the faces are obscured and very abstracted, I feel a sense of a relationship here, maybe to oneself or to another human, but it's blurred. They're not sure what their role is or how they fit in or how their relationship is to each other because their identities are obscured. They're not really sure what they're doing.
Yeah. That's great. You had your hand raised. Yeah.
I think it's pessimistic and disordered, and a little bit of focus on ugliness in life.
Can I ask you what makes you think that? Like, what visually gives you that impression?
Well, the mouth on the figure on the left is distorted. It's distorted and unreal. I see some pain in that face, and I see some pain in the figure on the right.
Yes.
Yeah. It's great. Yeah. Yes.
Well, I see a memory, like the figure on the left. The rest of it is a memory, and I think it's connected to the yellow oyster thing, you know, in his hair, and I think the memory. I think he's concerned. He might be concerned the memory is upside down.
That's great.
Corey?
Yes.
I'm seeing nudity on the figure to the right. Am I? Okay, but not just me. Okay.
What is giving you that impression?
I'm thinking I'm seeing breasts and nipple.
So there, yeah. So whatever the creases are, yeah. There's figuration there. Yeah.
So therefore, the figure on the left, with again the red that you were mentioning, I agree about. They're in anguish, and I'm guessing anguish about the figure on the right. In their mind. I like the back of their mind concept. I
Yeah.
agree with that.
Sarah?
So I'm gonna say, like, initially, and I'm coming at as a person who works in religious art, like immediately I'm like Mary and Joseph, and they're next to each other, and then the more I'm looking at it, it feels like one of those magic eye posters where you like shift perception, and then also there's the two portraits, and to me, they're both looking at me, but I can almost not hold Mary and Joseph in the same place as these two figures. And I don't see the anger as much. I don't know. I see some sort of optimism So
Mm.
there seems, the red and the yellow and the green and the blue, the primary colors feel playful.
Mm.
To me. And again, like maybe we bring our own, ways of being to the figure. So to me, it's almost like a palimpsest. There's like portraits or religious figures placed one on top of the
Right.
other, but which is which? It's
Yeah.
not clear which one is
Yeah.
underneath and which one's on top. So thank you for this. Because initially I was like, nah, and the more I look at it, the more I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. But a lot of times even I am, and I love art. Like I don't always give myself the time. So I may not have even seen the faces.
Yeah.
If I moved past it quickly in a gallery, I would have immediately seen the Virgin Mary, because that's like where I am, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I see her in toast and all,
In toast, yeah.
I would have moved past it probably more quickly than here because I don't like red.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
I just don't like red. It just, I agree, angry, to me, it's angry, it's
Yeah, yeah.
powerful, it's scary.
Hmm.
And I would probably, okay, moving on, too
Yeah.
much. Are you going to share with us what the artist?
Yeah, I was thinking.
The artist's name is Genesis Tremaine. I was at the National Gallery, I forget what it was for, but I turned a corner, and it wasn't this painting, it was another painting of hers, and it like floored me for a lot of different reasons, but this one is called The Feast of the Annunciation. Yes.
So I hesitated to go to the religious side, and you know me, but here I immediately saw the one on the right is a woman. You can see like breasts, and then I like what somebody said about, yes, red is like anger, but it's out of anguish. And in his face are another sets of eyes. Like he's trying to deal with other people's perceptions, things that people have put on him. I start to think about how, well, somebody said this and somebody said this, and you're trying to take everybody else's perception as to how you're supposed to deal with religion. You said Feast of the Annunciation?
Yeah, that's what this one's titled.
Yeah, it's like, I'm trying to deal with this whole thing of religion, and it's bringing me to an anguish that comes out in frustration, sometimes anger. Trying to figure all this out. You can't really figure it all out. And there's this confused sense about, I like what somebody said though about it's the person from the back and the person from the front. Hey, that's pretty, don't get into split personalities here or we'll go into psychoanalysis.
Well, I think...
But here, there is a lot in there.
Yeah, there's a lot. And Genesis Tremaine is she's utilizing disruption in a really interesting way. Because the figure on the left has so many facial features that could or don't belong to it, I'm not entirely sure if the figure on the right, if the small face is the actual face,
That's the afterthought.
or if, these are separate eyes. I don't know. There's a lot going on here.
Holy moly. I think who said that? I said it.
Are you looking up Genesis Tremaine?
I'm actually sorry. Yo. What? Okay. Sorry. Okay.
I love it.
The assumption has been for the figure that's on the left, right? Like initially when I was looking at it, it looked like, like some royal who's got a beard who is like on a blue background, right? But then when I looked up the actual painting, that blue background now looks like hair to me, and the head actually looks like it's the red, what we're all reading as red in anger. It's actually like a brown face with eyes and a mouth or whatever. Anyway, sorry.
I love your excitement. Yes?
I'm curious what's the size of this piece?
I don't know. I probably should know, but I don't know.
It's enormous.
Yeah, some of the work that I've seen in person is pretty large. I'm not sure about this one. I'm a little curious, and not to put him on the spot, but Dave Moreland, can you think of any portraiture, like this is a portrait, but it's also two people, and I can't think of any, maybe I just can't think of it, but any, you know, I'm thinking of the farmer and his wife standing there of two people, but it's more zoomed out. It's not cropped like this is cropped. I don't know.
So bacon, perhaps.
Yeah.
It looks like a face and the back of the head. So I can see, we're seeing this figure from front and back.
Yeah, that's what Chris had said. Yeah. Yep. Yes.
It looks like a contrast between two people's perception of the Madonna image.
Mm.
The blue person on the right behind her seems to be pleasantly affected, blue and kind of peaceful. The image of her that's on the top of the left person's head is different, and it looks like it's causing a different kind of emotion. And for the person on the right, the emotion to me looks you know, confused, angry, you know, the teeth, the open mouth, all the eyes, and because there's so many eyes, kind of recognizing that this is a very difficult concept of whoever this Madonna image is.
Yeah. Do you, anyone can answer this, but do any of you hold two opposing views about the same thing at the same time within yourself? So, you know, there's this interesting thing that happens in modernism where in order to be more faithful to that sense of yourself, you can't just create one view of yourself. Like this is part of the reason of Picasso. And I was gonna, if anyone's interested, we won't talk about it now because I think we're pretty much running out of time. There's a great poem by Gertrude Stein called "Let Us Describe," and Stein was friends with Picasso and, you know, wrote in a cubistic way. But this poem is like so disorienting, but it's about a tragedy that happened. And Stein is being more faithful to the sense of a tragedy by making the language disorienting. Do you know what I'm saying? And so to impose rationalistic thought on trauma is another kind of trauma in some ways. And so a possibility is opened up within modernism and continues really where we're getting like, we don't exactly know what's going on here, but we have layered ideas about what's happening. All of us are seeing it from different vantage points, and that's one of the beautiful things that art does. You know, it has open parameters of invitation where you can come to it and see it, and immediately you're like, I recognize my own dream state in this. Like that's incredible. Yeah.
The artist's name again?
Genesis Tremaine.
Background, ethnic background?
She's African American.
Ooh. And probably Roman Catholic.
I believe.
At least background.
Yeah, it's worth looking into. Yeah. Yes.
Well, the scale of the figures being so different tells me something. I'm not exactly sure what.
Yeah.
And it makes me want to keep looking at it. Like, I hope there's a bench in front of this or beside it, or you know, somewhere where I can just sit and, you know, maybe even get my journal out and just throw some ideas down, because I see nothing straightforward about it except the neckline on the figure on the right. I mean, on the left.
Yeah.
You know, everything else, you know, the color, the shapes, the choice of positioning, the disparate objects within each figure, and the scale. The scale, like, now I really, I'm going to hunt this painting down.
Yeah.
You know, to really, to to see it, because if this is a very large scale painting, that would be even more amplified compared to, seeing it this size.
Yeah. There's two quotes, probably my favorite quotes about art. Victor Hugo, who wrote Les Miserables and Hunchback of Notre Dame, said, "There's nothing more interesting than a wall behind which something is happening." And so he's talking about how interesting is obscurity, like obscuring certain things. Wendell Berry, who I mentioned earlier, said, "The mind that is not baffled is not employed." And I think art gets the other quote. That wasn't the second quote. The other quote that I love is James Baldwin said, "The purpose of art is to reveal the questions hidden by the answers." To reveal the questions hidden by the answers. Well, it's after 1. I had a couple of other. We only went through 2. You guys are incredible. Oh my gosh, your participation is great. Well, I had a Rothko in here. This is a piece by Hung Liu that I saw at, I think it was the Baltimore Museum of Art a while back. This is Hilma af Klint's Tree of Knowledge. And then I love talking about Guernica with people. It's a great painting to talk about together. I don't know, is there an appeal to any of those? What's that? Yeah. We hadn't touched on like strictly abstract art. Does anybody want to hit that quick? Couple minutes. Okay. Yes?
I've been puzzled as to why I like Rothko so much.
Do you like Rothko?
Very
Great.
much. I stare at it, but I don't know why I like it.
That's great. Yeah. Okay, here's another quote for you. Shoot, now I'm forgetting the name. I know the quote, but I can't remember the name. He's a singer, really raspy voice. No, blues singer. Tom Waits. Tom Waits said, now if I ask people a question, they get out their phone, and I say, no, I just want to wonder about it a little while. And I think having a sense of wonder about things is really important. And hanging with that, like, I don't know why this is appealing to me, is again, I mentioned earlier about if you don't like something, there's information packed in it. There's information packed in the fact that you're drawn to Rothko. I'm drawn to Rothko too. When I was in 5th grade, we took a field trip to the National Gallery of Art to see. We specifically went to see the John James Audubon exhibition. And I remember we passed through the modern wing, and I remember seeing a Rothko, and I didn't necessarily have any thoughts about it at the time, but just that initial glance stuck with me for a long, long time. And I've had, Rothko's hard to talk about. With this painting in particular, because it's like 12 feet long and probably 7 feet high or something. One of his Seagram murals. And Rothko too, like he had things, he demanded a real strict set of parameters around viewing his work. He said that you should be like a particular distance from the work when you're looking at it. And so this is very problematic here. But anyway, any other thoughts about?
Yeah, he said.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So I'm pretty relational when I think about art and looking at what's standing next to something else. So what we just looked at, and now coming to this,
Yeah.
I'm seeing there's twinning.
That's great. Yeah.
As there was in the last one.
Hmm.
What are the relationships between these two beings that are, for lack of a
Yeah.
better word, because I don't have a word for what those are.
Yeah.
So it gives me a similar experience of, in a different way, but consideration of the twinning and the symbolism.
Can I ask you a question really quick? When you were just talking about those, you went like this. You went, those two. What is that about for you? Energy?
Energy that's like, I don't have words.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it is
No, that's
this
perfect.
movement that's happening within my retina that I'm seeing going back and forth a little bit. And I'm
Yeah.
feeling that energy as I'm
Yeah, I get, and I ask you specifically about that because Rothko's always done this vibrational thing with me. Like, there's almost like this whispered hum coming from Rothko's work, and you know, he's dealing with. I mean, this is strict colors in relationship with one another, and that strict colors have the power to produce that sort of hum is very interesting to me. Yes, Sarah.
I want this to be symmetrical, but the one on the left, at least from this perspective, is slightly larger. And it's really just like, it's like this beautiful harmony, but there's a certain disconcertedness about that. Just, and it's not obviously larger, but just a slight bit, yeah, it's a little, feel like ease.
Yeah, do you feel like something would be lost if it was symmetrical?
somewhat like looking at identical twins.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm with, excuse me, real quick.
Yes.
I'm with you. I looked at it and said, wait a minute. The engineering side, the analytical side said, look, they're not identical.
Yeah.
As if they're supposed to be identical.
Yeah, right. Thank you guys so much for being here. Y'all are very attentive. I really appreciate you being conversational and chiming in. I feel like I've learned a lot, and I hope you've had fun. So thanks for being here.